Hey everybody, welcome live, Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. My name is J. Julio Vela, along with my host, Justin Harris. How are you?
I'm good.
And with our special guest, the candidate for the Harris County District Attorney's Office, Todd Overstreet.
Good
Hello.
evening.
How are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
He's Curtis to his mother.
Yeah, if I'm in trouble.
Curtis Todd?
Yes, if you call me that, it's going to get country and western. I'll have to flip the table over. There'll be like a bar fight.
So let's not
Bring my brothers in.
we can't afford another table. This one's already cracked, so let's not break it anymore.
I will say you look like a Houston, Harris County District Attorney.
You have no idea how long it took me to glue on this mustache.
You know, I ran into you, I must have been 2 days ago. So all of us are in the trenches in the courthouse and we see each other on a daily basis. I will tell you, I saw Todd walking up to the courthouse and I said, you know what? That man knows where he's going. I think you were wearing the hat. You were walking with the strut that you're known for. And I said, you know what? That man's running for the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and I'd like to get to know him.
Well, my strut is because I had a full hip replacement, and it's hard for me to walk.
Is that it? I want to ask, is it like from a gunfight, or is it like from some rodeo?
No, it was rodeo horse stuff, but yeah, that's the strut. I'd like to change it into more of a casual walk, but it just kind of gets in its own way.
I literally made up rodeo horse.
Yeah.
And that's actually what happened?
I still team rope and rodeo. I grew up in Amarillo, and I ran track in college, and I had a really bad hip. And about 7 years ago, I heard it on a horse at the J.A. Ranch, which, if most people don't know, that's Charles Goodnight's old ranch in Amarillo. And so then I had a full hip replacement about 6 years ago. So I'd like to say it was like this, I'm confident strut to the courthouse, but that'd be an understatement.
It's partial titanium.
Let me ask you, you say, were you breaking horses or roping horses? Or roping?
Well, I team rope and rodeo, so I'm a header where I rope the horns and then someone picks up the feet. So that's my side hustle.
You ever ride with Sam Kamek?
Well, I've never roped with him, but I know he's a roper and a very good one too.
And speaking of Sam, he just had a big surgery. He's very successful. I hope he's doing the best.
Me too.
And so we know Gary Trichter is another cowboy lawyer.
Yes, he is.
You ever ride with him?
Yes, we have.
Oh yeah?
Well, you know, he and I were law partners together.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So that's a good segue. Tell us, bring us up to speed on.
Okay, so I started out the DA's office with Johnny Holmes, I guess the original handlebar mustache
That's
guy.
right.
Yeah. I hope he likes my mustache.
Who wouldn't, man? That is.
So anyway, I was at the DA's office with Holmes, and then Rosenthal took over, and then I went to the U.S. Attorney's office for about a year and a half. 9/11 happened, which turned the whole place into chaos. And then I had two kids kind of back to back. And Doug Murphy had started working for Trichter initially as an intern while he was in law school. And then I think Chris Samuelson and Gary working together. And then about that time, Chris left and Doug had gotten his law license and said, if you're ever interested in criminal defense, this might be the perfect place for you. And I looked into it, and the next thing you know, I worked for them, and it was Trichter, Murphy, and Overstreet for 5 years-ish.
I had no idea it was Trichter, Murphy, and Overstreet.
Right. And
now you're dating me.
Right, I know. And then I left and started my own gig, and Trichter and Murph stayed together. But Doug and I grew up together, have known each other since the 3rd grade. He lived 2 alleys down from me in Amarillo. So we've known each other for almost 40 years.
That's amazing.
Right. And then Gary and I knew each other because I prosecuted his clients. And no offense, Gary, I hated you. But he taught me how to be a lawyer and a businessman. Great guy.
So you started off, your first gig was at the Harris County District Attorney's office?
Harris County DA's office, and was there for about 5, 6 years.
So through the 5 or 6 years.
Can we just ask real quick?
Yeah.
So it was you, Gary Trichter, Doug Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
You and Gary have the cowboy thing down pretty well. Doug's kind of like your city slicker.
Right. Right, who also grew up in Amarillo.
Yeah, I didn't really. I've
I
forgotten
think
that he's from Amarillo.
I think he's the only kid from Amarillo that I ever knew that never caught a fish and never shot a deer.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to clarify that. Now we can go back onto the real
Right.
series.
I heard Doug just bought a building.
He did. So, okay, and so when I first met Gary, he was a pilot. He wasn't a cowboy. And that's a whole nother funny story, maybe for another episode.
Yeah.
But then when he morphed into, I guess, the cowboy Buffalo Bill persona non grata, it was fun.
Yeah. All right.
So you were with the Harris County District Attorney for 5 or 6 years, you said?
Correct.
So on this current track, that would mean that you were probably division chief of the felony bureau.
Well, back then, movement was different. It took forever just to become a misdemeanor 3 to a number 2.
Right.
It wasn't like the attrition that it is now. So when I left, I was the number 2 in the 174th. George Godwin was the judge. When I decided to leave, that was my position. Rosenthal, I don't know if this was through punishment or what, he made me the district court chief of a juvenile court and moved Beverly Milazzo back into the trial bureau. So when I technically left the office, I was a district court chief.
What made you leave the office?
Going to the feds.
Right. Okay. So then you went to the AUSA.
Mm-hmm.
Who was who was?
So Mossbacher was the U.S. attorney, but the election had just happened, so he was kind of about to, I guess, get removed. And then I don't remember who they had. I think Greg Sears was the interim when I started. But there were so many old DAs there, from Ashley Chapman, a bunch of people that I'd known. Kelly Siegler was pretty instrumental in me looking into it because she knew so many people over there, Mark McIntyre, a bunch of old DAs that we had all prosecuted with. It was a great deal.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I never, because, I mean, I'm still a baby lawyer. I'm 10 years in. I mean, what are you in now?
I'm over 20.
Right, okay. So, and you know, you say these names and you talk about these individuals that I've only heard stories of and seen through and seen, you know, been talked about.
Right.
When you left the U.S. Attorney's Office, what made you leave and what made you go be a defense attorney at that point?
So, 9/11 was a strain on anyone who was, especially a federal employee. I mean, I was in the gun/narcotics division. Abe Martinez was my chief, and then instantly they were trying to move people around because of 9/11. We formulated a terrorism task force, which in my opinion made no sense, since every terrorist at that point was on the run, but they wanted to do something. It was pretty chaotic, I'm not going to lie. And then also I just had another kid within about 13 months of one another, 14 months. And it was just the timing was right. And the gig was right.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know that I would have left but for Doug, who had been my lifelong friend, and then Gary, who I deeply respected and knew as an amazing lawyer, just said, come aboard. And then, of course, Samuelson had worked there. I think Rick DeToto had worked there.
Sure.
There's a couple other people that, had been there that I knew as a prosecutor that I liked. So it just seemed like and it was the perfect decision to make at the time.
And so now you've been doing defense work for over a decade.
Well, yeah, I would say close to 15, 16 years. I went to law school because I can't do math, so I think it's roughly about that.
I understand that. Amarillo, where'd you go to undergrad?
I went to USC, Southern Cal, on a track, and I was technically on a football scholarship, but I really just ran track from Amarillo, which is quite a culture shock.
What kind of, what'd you run?
I ran the 800, the 4x4 relay, and the 1500.
And you go there on scholarship?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So I got to tell a funny story. So
tell me.
When I was on the 4x4 relay, I had Quincy Watts, who won the gold medal in Barcelona after he graduated. I had Curtis Conway, who played for the Bears, and then Travis Hanna, who played for the Oilers right before they transferred to Nashville, and then me. So my nickname was Just Don't bleep it up.
Just don't mess it
I
up.
mean, unless I dropped the baton in a weather vane, we had a pretty good chance of pulling it off.
That's amazing.
Which leg were you?
I was the third leg.
Your third.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
All right.
That's amazing.
by the time I got it, they were, I mean, literally I would have had to got, shot by a sniper in the stands not to pull this thing off.
No idea. The man's like, do you still run?
No, thus the hip replacement.
Right,
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly. I mean, old habits are hard to break. I try to get out there, but no.
What made you go to law school? Where'd you go?
Well, I went to St. Mary's.
San Antonio.
I had no intent of being an attorney. I had worked in a law firm in Austin right after I graduated from college, but I was really into fly fishing. I wanted to go to Alaska, and my grandfather had passed away. He willed me a 1983 Cavalier station wagon, and I had been up there before, and we went up there again, and I got a job working as a park ranger in Kodiak, and then went to work on a fishing boat, and then said, I've got to get back into school.
I understand.
I'm going to get stuck up here forever.
What year? Around what year?
Oh, wait. So
you got to bring me back.
You drove the '83
Cavalier
Cavalier.
station wagon from
to-
Amarillo to Homer, Alaska, put it on a ferry, took it 13 hours on a ferry ride with kids who had never seen water, especially that kind of body of water, and lived there off and on for about a year. And
When you say
Fishing,
off and on,
fishing.
Okay, so I had gone
You
up
went up there for fly fishing, and then you got on a
Well, I
fishing
went up there
boat
right
and-
after I graduated, and I worked in the canneries.
Okay.
And then I came back and got the job working at a law firm, and then also worked for George Shipley, who was Ann Richards' campaign
Sure,
manager
right.
at the
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
which
okay.
was the dream job for anyone with a poli-sci degree.
Yeah.
And about 3 weeks into it, I'm like, which is funny now because I'm running for political office,
Yeah.
I'm like, this isn't for me. So I went back up to Alaska with a good friend of mine, Bill Lanier, and that's when I got the park ranger gig. And that's when I decided, you know what, I've been up here back and forth for about a year. I'm going to apply to law school. I found out that I got into law school when I was in the middle of the ocean on a boat with radio, only like, CB radio technology. We didn't have cell phones. And they had said, hey, someone in Kodiak is trying to get a hold of you. He wants to let you, have some news. So I radioed in, and it was my friend Bill Lanier, who was there at some dispatch center, and said, I've got some letters from law schools.
Nice.
Do you want me to
open them up?
Do you want me to open them? I'm like, I was so miserable. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't open them right now. I may jump off this.
Jump off the boat.
So yeah, then went to law school, and then Mike Anderson interviewed
Sure.
me at my law school in St. Mary's, and at that time I'd gotten a job as a plaintiff's, at a plaintiff's firm in the Valley. I spoke pretty decent Spanish, and he said, if you want to come to Houston and learn to be a trial lawyer, this is the thing you need to do. So I took him up on it.
Mike Anderson, Mike Anderson.
Mike Anderson, yeah. Pat Stallings and Mike, who I got to know right off the bat. Things were so different at the DA's office back then.
Okay, so let's talk
Yeah.
about it. How was it different? Like, what do you remember back? So this is take me back. You got to give me a year. You got to date me.
So this would have been, let's see, 1995.
Sure.
Yeah, 1995. And he convinced me to come and get I got a pre-commit slot. That would have been 96. Judge Ross was my first judge in the summer.
As in Judge Ross.
Yeah, Judge Ross
Sherman
in
Ross.
Court 10 in the old building, which is where the juvenile building is now. That was the courthouse. The building they just tore down at 201 Fannin was our building. We had our own building then. Those were the days. I'm not going to lie in terms of the camaraderie, because you had your own place, you had your own space.
Sure.
It was such an honor to be a DA, which is kind of a seg into why I'm kind of doing this. So when I went to baby prosecutor school, I knew nothing about like other counties, because you go to Austin, there's all these lawyers from all these counties.
What is baby prosecutor school for the folks? We don't talk about that very much on
Yeah,
the show.
so
what is
when
that?
you first sign on as a DA, they send you to a school about a couple of months into it. I'm assuming they still do that now. I don't know if they do
They
it or
do.
not.
I hear about it.
Yeah, so you go to Austin, and there's prosecutors from all over the state, or they might have some come in, kind of like when we go to TCDLA thing in San Antonio. where they have all these people come around and tell you how to prosecute cases, what to look for, from evidence to ethics to whatever. And it lasts about 2 or 3 days. So you get there and, I'm only, what am I, 26, 27 years old, and there's prosecutors from all over the state. And when you would tell them, because they would ask, so what county are you from? What county are you from? And you would say, well, I'm from Harris County. And it was like saying you were from like the biggest, most baddest law firm in the whole country. Because they were just like, whoa, kind of like, how did you get that job kind of thing.
Sure.
It had this mystique.
Sure.
And at that particular time, I wasn't expecting that because I took a job.
That's all you knew, yeah.
That's all I knew. And I was young and I was inexperienced and I was scared and nervous. And then all of a sudden I got there and I thought, and Ted Poe used to come and speak at this thing. And I thought, whoa, this is like a big deal and a big responsibility. This isn't something to be taken lightly, because it seemed like every single person there would have killed to have that prosecutor job, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's changed.
Let's talk about that. So, as the head law enforcement official in Harris County, how do you see that's different from now, and what do you think about, what are your plans for it?
Okay,
so you want to bring that kind of thing back. You say it's changed. You're saying you want that more of that prestige, or the feeling of the prestige.
Well,
maybe prestige isn't the right word, but
if you talk to some of the more experienced prosecutors that are a little bit older, they will say that, and I'm not going to mention any names, but they will say that it used to be a thing to be hired on.
Oh, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
People coveted that job. I remember coming for my interview and I'd already been a pre-commit, so I felt like, well, at least I kind of know what I'm getting into and I know some of the people. But I thought my chances of securing a job there were slim to none. It was the interview process, you had to wait for your interview. It took forever to get it. And then when you showed up, there was 10 or 15 people that were from, I think the girl that I sat next to before I went in for my interview was from Cornell. Oh. And I thought, I went to St. Mary's.
Well, I was gonna say too, man. If you're dating back to 1993, St. Mary's, it's same thing with Stickle and same thing. But even back then, that's tough.
Right.
So you obviously either made a splash, or somebody saw something in you that said, you know what, we need to bring him to Harris County.
Well, the good news for me is I had actually gotten to try 2 or 3 cases and had a feel for it, and I think some of the people realized, well, this guy can do this. Put him in the trial bureau and he can succeed. But it was different. It was, and it really meant something for somebody to work there. It was just as hard. It was just as time consuming. I honestly don't think I ever worked as hard in terms of hours.
Sure.
But honestly, I don't think I was ever as happy in terms of what you felt like you were accomplishing. Now, there were some hard and rigid rules that needed to change, and they did over time. But it was such an amazing place to learn. It was such an amazing, you felt like every day was such an accomplishment.
Did you feel like you had mentorship and you had a relationship from the top down?
Big time. And you felt like no matter what you did, somebody had your back. There was exceptions. You could never lie. Johnny Holmes, no matter what you did, if you ever told a lie, you were gone. For instance, he had a policy, if you got caught, I think, if you were intoxicated and driving, you could keep your job if you took the breath test. He was all about you comply, you tell the truth, everybody makes mistakes, but as long as you don't lie and you don't cheat and you hold this job and the type of, level of importance that we do, then you can stay.
I didn't know that you had been not only I think I knew you'd been a district attorney at some point, but assistant district attorney. I didn't know that you had worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office either, because your reputation is so renowned and solid as a defense attorney. I didn't know that you had this other background, that you had that type of experience.
You knew about the park ranger stint.
Yeah,
I knew about the park ranger. I knew he was smarter than the average man.
We had to go fly fishing sometime together.
Man,
my true talent.
So what made you? Okay, so then you, let's get to the story. And so then you at some point you go to
Churches.
Trichter, Murphy, Overstreet. And how long are you there?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
And then you, how was the transition from going from a district attorney to assistant U.S. attorney to a defense attorney?
It was like starting all over. I mean,
Each time?
Each time. It was like starting all over. I remember my first interview with Gary with a client. I mean, and just to hear him talking to this person the way we had never talked to, I mean, you know, when you're a prosecutor, you have, you know, your victims would, you know, call and they would harass the secretarial staff but you never really got those sit down moments where you're, you know, intimately talking to this person about everything. Like, how'd you get here and what happened to you? And do you have a family? Do you have kids? And to see Gary talk to this person like they were the most important person on the universe at that particular time was mind-boggling. And I realized, oh my God, I can really make a difference here. Maybe in a way uniquely that I couldn't even as an assistant district attorney. It was weird. For instance, I passionately prosecuted, maybe sometimes too passionately prosecuted, when I had that job because I loved it. I believed in what I was doing. I think I had one or two ladies or victims, and I think they were both ladies that I prosecuted. One, she had been, they attempted to murder her at the Whataburger at Richmond right there by 59. She was pulling in there getting something to eat, and these guys came up and they kidnapped her and they drove around all around town making her, you know, pull out money out of an ATM, and they took her in the field and shot her like 6 or 7 times, and she lived, and she literally dragged her body to some location, and somebody came to the door and rescued her, and I prosecuted the people that did that, and I think she was one of only 2 people that ever sent me like a thank you card. But when I became a defense attorney, next thing you know, I'm like, you know, in a wedding. I'm like, you know, they're at my home fixing my house, and we're going to barbecues. There was this whole nother level of this person is like our family member.
Well, and I
that
think
was really cool.
It also shows your reputation as a defense attorney in the defense community is oh, well, who's on the case?
Right.
Overstreet. Oh, okay. That's a good lawyer, solid lawyer. People trust him, families trust him to be professional, ethical, and just kick some butt in trial in a courtroom.
Well, and I think more importantly, they want you to care.
They cares about
They
him.
want you to care.
People, yes.
For what you lack in certain aspects of your career developmentally, I mean, you're getting better every year. I mean, look at Dick DeGuerin. I mean, I would argue that he's in as much of his prime now as he was, you know, because he's got that many more years behind him. And I think people understand that, but they want to know you care.
Sure.
They want you to see that you actually are, you know, have just more than money, but sweat equity into this thing.
I
think that's a massive factor.
I agree, at least within the community.
You can't fake that.
No, you can't.
Yeah,
you can't fake the sweat equity.
Right.
I mean, you can't.
Right.
So let's talk about that. So why are you running? What made you run, man? You're at the top of your game. You're a phenomenal lawyer. You're well respected. Why all of a sudden you're going to say, you know what, it's time to be district attorney?
Have you run before?
Never. I've never run for class president or class clown. Nothing. Zero.
Except the 800.
Except one time. Yeah, except for the 800. I was the chaplain in my fraternity, and if you knew me real well personally, that's pretty much a funny thing.
Well, what fraternity were you in?
A Phi Delta.
Phi Delta.
Yeah.
Nice,
Really?
nice.
Yeah.
So what? So you decide. I will say there was some rumors that you were going to run in the community, but it wasn't like that. Oh, you were set up to run. Like this wasn't something that you had been building and working towards. It's just something. Oh, he might be running, and okay.
Well, that part's true.
Well, I mean, so tell me about it.
Well,
what was your decision process on it?
So I didn't want to run necessarily. I like what I do. I enjoy what I do. I wasn't looking for a new thing. But I just saw what was happening, and then a couple of people had talked to me. I don't want to tell you who those people are. And said, are you interested? And I said, heck no. And they asked me again. I said, hell no. And then it went on, and then finally I just thought deeply, well, this place meant something to me. It still means something to me. And even though we're defense attorneys, that's such a family dynamic there. I mean, we see these people every day. We trust them to do their job in order for us to do our job. We expect a level of consistency, efficiency, and beyond the ethical aspect of the prosecution. If they're better, we're better.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe that. And I think that's what's been lost in translation. And I don't know if that's because of the politics at play, because I'm not a politician. I don't even really know where I fit schematically and all that. I know I'm not a Republican. I know there's things that I deeply care about that the Democratic Party represents, particularly environmental things. But I'm probably more of a centrist. I think there's some common sense things you can do to make everybody's job and roles go more efficiently, including the defense bar. I don't think you should have to go through 900 layers to get an answer when you can get, if you have prosecutors that are trained and aren't afraid of their own shadow. And that's one of the big differences back then.
Sure.
Johnny Holmes let us, for better for worse, sometimes worse, practice law. And we fell all over each other, made mistakes left and right. But as long as, again, we did the little things we were supposed to, like call the victims, do our RIP calls, do our work, if we failed, he had our back. And that's how we became good lawyers.
Sure.
We weren't afraid to fail. And we failed a lot.
Sure.
We did.
What did failure look like then?
You would lose a trial. You would get beat up by a good lawyer. Back then, I felt like it was a little bit different in terms of even the camaraderie with the defense bar, because they knew that we were trying our hardest to do our jobs, but at the same time, we're doing them ethically and honestly. I don't think they distrusted us in terms of course, it was different. We didn't have, the portal and the discovery stuff. They had to come and look at the file. There were stories about lawyers that didn't comply with ethical rules and hide stuff, but I felt like Holmes punished them. I think you were more afraid to do that than you were, at least in my opinion, than get in court, try a case, and fail. I felt like the number one thing I never wanted to do is let down the integrity of the office.
Sure.
And if that meant I lost, then it meant I lost.
We're at the halfway mark, 713-807-1794, here with Justin Harris and our special guest, Harris County candidate for the district attorney, Todd Overstreet. Give us a call, 713-807-1794 if you have some questions.
Where else have you been on this campaign cycle so far where the general public's just been able to call and ask you a question that they have?
Not once. I spoke at the Harris County Bail Bondsman's Luncheon that John Burns invited me to, and then I was interviewed by the ACLU about 2 weeks ago. All the candidates were. At least on the
but right now, for the next 30 minutes, you can call in and ask any question.
This will be the first time ever.
All right.
This is a good old-fashioned
organic, raw
Texas showdown.
Yeah.
Look, and so I think it's amazing that we have you on the show, and I think that at least from the insider community, you are the one everybody likes, the one everybody knows, the one everybody is the inside horse. Okay.
Unless you work for the current DA, then.
Well, even within the current DA, because I don't think the morale within the current DA's office is very good. Which
don't forget,
we'll
we're
talk
going to invite Kim Ogg.
We're going to invite Kim Ogg. I've already reached out to Audia Jones' crew. We're going to have other individuals. We're going to have them on for sure. So let's talk about the current administration. Let's talk about DA Kim Ogg. Let's start from the beginning. She has a lot of backing, right? And she has a lot of people that have fallen off.
right.
But she has money. She has resources. How does Todd Overstreet go against Kim Ogg? How do you plan? Talk to us about that. How are you going? She has resources.
Right. Well, so I will say candidly, as a first-time candidate in anything like this, I'm not totally sure.
Sure.
When I first started, when I really decided I was going to do this, of course, I'm no dummy. I called some people that might know how to kind of tell me how to navigate this. Again, I'm not going to tell you who these people were, but one or two of them said, you have no idea what you're doing. You need to not do this. Run for something else. Run for, I don't know, city councilman or something where it's not as big a deal. This woman has resources. She has, You know, she's been politicking for a long time. I think even her father or somebody was a politician. She's lived in that realm for a long time, and you have not. You know, are you capable of doing this? And I said, you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know till I try.
Sure.
But, and I don't know all of the people that she knows. I'm not a politician. To be quite honest, if I get elected, I hope I'm not sitting in my chair every day waiting for the phone to call to take me to a luncheon, to another political event. I know you practice down in Brazoria County. Jerry Yenny, for example,
Sure.
I'm not sure that you could actually do it every day like she does. But that place has lost prosecutors. They've lost manpower, woman power to do the job. And no offense to her, but if I had the job tomorrow, I would be in the 230th District Court. I would be in Court 14. I would be doing what I can to work these cases out and show by leadership, hey, we're going to get some more staff in here, but while we don't, let's all get to work and get this thing done.
Jerry Yenny does that.
Yeah, and she does that. She does that. She shows up and she gets it done. And again, I know Brazoria County is not Harris County. It could be an apple and orange comparison, but I have not, other than one time when I saw Kim come to I guess a CLE that Doug Murphy put on or something a year and a half ago, I haven't seen that woman in the courthouse one time.
Well, it was Doug Murphy.
Right.
No, but I agree. I've actually gone and sat in DA Yenny's office for a case, which was phenomenal to me. I was like, can I speak to the district attorney? Yeah, sure, come on in. And I scheduled it. We were there, and we worked it out. It was phenomenal.
Right. So I don't think I can out-politic her, because I don't have those skills. But I can outwork her, and I can be a better leader.
Let's talk about your ideas as being a leader.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about how DA Kim Mogg runs her docket. What are your thoughts on how they run their docket?
We can ask that. I'm just curious if you got like a list of 3 or 5 things that first day you would change.
Yeah, I do.
Are you going to share any of those with us?
I will.
All right.
Well, first of all, misdemeanor. I think in a lot of ways that whole thing needs an airstrike. Because there's so many simplistic ways to handle that just are just, to me, common sense. Pretrial diversion. If you go to other counties, y'all do. You go to practice in other counties. This numerical value, for instance, DWI, PTI, if a person has no priors, they have a family support group, they all in all are a good person, they just had a bad night, what difference does it make if they're 1-2 or 2-2? Right? It's just, I mean, there's so many other factors that go into a person's breath or blood alcohol content that has nothing to do with their damn character.
Right.
Just give them a PTI. Why do we have to have a secondary appellate process over an arbitrary number that the legislature picked out of a hat and just on bond conditions, and make that the line in the sand over whether you're instantly qualified or not?
Right.
What a drain on resources. I mean, you go to other counties, that's not the case. Just get it done. If all things otherwise are equal, then let's just move it along. It helps all of us, okay? If you're going to have a PTI program, okay? Bonds. This whole thing, this whole bond nightmare that we're all living in now, all of us, even as defense attorneys, we all have clients that don't even want pretrial bonds. You know, that like, well, I'm on a pretrial bond. My wife is on her way down to the station, down to the bonding company to pay the bond.
Right. I don't even
And then I just recently was I guess, by proxy through my daughter, a crime victim, where my daughter started her first day at school, high school. She went to cross-country practice at Spots Park, her and some other kids. While they were there was a predator there watching them. He watched the cars they went to. He broke into all their cars. He stole all their stuff. These 6 or 7 girls started their first day of high school with no clothes, no shoes, no books, no computers, no nothing, in tears. So, of course, I'm a lawyer in the criminal courthouse. I want to know who the hell did this. So I find this person's name, look it up, get in touch with the officer. This guy had 7 felony arrests. 7 felony arrests. I think 3 or 4 were actually felony convictions. He got a $100 bond and mocked the police officer who told me this later, that don't worry, I'll be out tomorrow before you finish your report. You know what? He was right. He was right. So where is the common sense on all that? That can be fixed, okay, with leadership. Granted, she's not setting bonds, judges are, okay? And there's kind of this egg in the face, backlash thing going on now where now, clients who make bond show up to the court after, going before the magistrate, show up to court, and we have to worry whether their bonds are going to be raised or they're not going to have the bond. I mean, that makes no sense. But Kim Ogg, currently, from what I understand from talking to higher-ups in the law enforcement community, HPD, Sheriff's Department, they can't sit in the same room together without getting in a walkout fight, like a bunch of 12-year-olds at the playground.
The DA's office
The DA's office and law enforcement.
Wow.
How, as you mentioned earlier, you are one of the chief law enforcement officials for the third or fourth largest city in America. How in the hell do you not have a relationship, a positive one, a working one, even if you don't love each other and aren't best friends, with HPD chief, the sheriff, the head sheriff of our county, and all the other chiefs of police in this community?
Right.
How's that possible? That's what needs to change.
Especially, and you find it in the news to be there. It's not only not positive; it's actually antagonistic.
Exactly.
Right.
It's actually a clash
Right.
between who are supposed to be the top law enforcement officials in the county.
Right. And if you want to effectuate change, if you think, for instance, you're worried about civil rights being violated in particular communities, or you think maybe with the marijuana enforcement things should change, how is that ever going to work if you're not sitting in the same room together?
Right.
Well, let's talk about
It can't work.
Yeah.
It's impossible. What, it's going to work by virtue of a story you might hear in the news about one another? That just creates more of a battlefield.
Let's talk about the presence and the opinion with the district attorney's office or law enforcement in general and the community. How do you see Kim Ogg's relationship with the community at large, and why? And what do you want your relationship with the community to be?
And how do you do that?
Yeah.
Well,
Picture.
so I think, like, for instance, what's happening right now with some of the folks in the police unions, Joe Grimaldi
Sure.
is a perfect example. He's so frustrated by what he perceives to be an out front attack on victims' rights, okay? By what he perceives to be as a lack of leadership in our community as it pertains to law enforcement. His perception, and I think he's right, if you're the district attorney, you're supposed to enforce the laws of the county and the state and the United States, and you're supposed to seek justice. That doesn't mean you're a legislator, and that doesn't mean you're a defense attorney, okay? It's a role that you play, and you're supposed to be fair and equitable, and seeking justice doesn't always mean seeking convictions, but sometimes it does. And sometimes there's a bad person or people that need to be prosecuted, and the community needs to see, again, back to the care factor as a defense attorney, this person cares. They're working their ASS off because they care about my community that I live in. And so when someone like a Joe Grimaldi feels like that person who's in charge of that position, like Kim Ogg, the DA, isn't doing their job, then he's making it known. Now, we live in this world of social media. You put it on Facebook, you put it on, whatever you're going to do. That's not necessarily a world I live in, but the way I think you fix that is whatever's done in the past is in the past. You bring those relationships back together and you start working together with them, because that's the only way you're going to get them to change. If you think there's something that HPD is doing wrong, then you show up in their office every day and talk to them about it. Sure. Or you invite them to your office and you fix it, okay? This divided house is just going to fall, and that's what's happening.
Well, let's talk about the culture within the district attorney's office currently. What's your vision of it? See, I've asked around before you came on the show. I asked a lot of Todd's coming on the show. Everybody knows it. What do I ask him? One of the biggest concerns that was echoed to me was, when are the district line prosecutors going to have some some say. They're going to
Discretion.
have
The
some
D word.
discretion.
Discretion.
Right. And what are your thoughts on that? And how do you intend to fix that? I mean, or not fix it. I'm going to say fix it, but what are your thoughts on that and your vision on it?
Well, so
Well, they released, what was it, an 88-page policy on discretion. So how many pages is your discretion manual going to be?
it's going to be like a half a page
Yeah.
to 1.5 pages.
88 pages on discretion.
I don't know that if I added up all the pages I read in law school, it's 88 pages. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. No, that's absurd. That's absurd.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because what that is, that's not discretion. That's, I'm going to tell you what to do in 88 pages, and if you don't do it, then you fall out of favor.
Or I'm going to tell you how to use my discretion.
Exactly. All you're doing, absorb these rules, and that's my version of discretion.
Right.
That can't be, discretion is this. Discretion is training with leadership, and those people feel comfortable that I'm going to make the right decision, and that right decision may not always be popular, but it'll be understood and consistent, and it'll be, again, my whole vision on this thing is just do the right thing. It's not, we have some difficult cases down there, but let's be honest, those are probably less than 10%. A lot of them are kind of cookie cutter situations we've all been through before, and you want us to do the right thing. If I'm the district attorney, and me as a defense attorney, I want you to do the right thing. We almost agree on 95% of the things that need to go down. But if they don't have the confidence level to make that call, and their only outlet is an 88-page diatribe, come on.
Right.
What are your thoughts on, and I think it's a problem, maybe you don't think it's a problem, but the amount of cases that are filed or not being filed, in my opinion, there's a lot of worthless cases that are going on out there, and they are clogging up the docket system. Nobody can make a decision. What are your thoughts on, is it Todd Overstreet, tough on crime, jaywalking, you're arrested, and we're going to search you? Where do you fall on that? Because I know, for example, Devin Anderson, everybody gets arrested, we go figure it out in court, right? Kim Ogg initially said, no, poor people don't get arrested. Oh, wait, poor people do get arrested. And now, where does Todd Overstreet fall on that?
Because you're talking about building a relationship with law enforcement, and when the intake division operating 24/7 right now, there's someone on the phone in the DA's office with the person on the other end is a law enforcement officer.
Right.
You know, and those are the two people on the front lines, the DA in the intake division. I guess now they're staying in intake pretty much always, but and the prosecutor, the law enforcement officer out on the street. And if I got to imagine that a police officer, he's out there, he's doing his job, or doing it the way he thinks he should. He's got someone in handcuffs in the backseat of his car. Now he has to call the intake division and see if the DA's office will accept charges. And if there's this new policy against this type of charge or this type of person or something, and the ADA on the intake line says, not taking those charges, cut them loose, no matter how much goodwill you may be doing with the brass, you're going to still have Joe Grimaldi out there potentially railing against any, not saying you,
right,
because you haven't said your positions yet, but railing against any policy that declines charges for this type of case or this type of person.
But I feel like, as you said, if you truly are the leader and a chief law enforcement official in the third or fourth largest city in America, how in the world do y'all not already know that? Like if you're the chief of police and you just had a meeting with the prosecutor and y'all decided, okay, these are the things we're going to focus on. If you call intake, we're not taking these anymore. I don't know what that scenario would be.
Okay, that's fair.
But how could that not be disseminated down if you had a leadership role? It could.
Sure.
And that's the difference. Now, in intake, when I was a prosecutor, you always were afraid of taking a dog case because you may be the person who's trying it, or one of your buddies would be, or a supervisor that you were going to work with saw the type of crappy cases you were taking. There was a different level of accountability. Now when you've got just kind of staff member people that are never going to show up in court and don't have any accountability on whether they take it and it's dog or not, that needs to change.
Well, I think it goes back.
Don't you think? I mean, if you don't have any money in the game, and you're taking charges and you know you're never going to have to show up in court to actually handle that case.
Or you don't see how the judges are reacting.
Exactly.
You don't see how things are actually going down in court.
Right.
Because the names on who are taking the charges on cases are names that I'm familiar with the people, but I forgot that they were in the DA's office because I haven't seen them since they took that job. They've been holed up with Jim Leitner doing it.
Right, and I remember there were a couple of times, I want to say this guy's name, but I won't. But I remember when I became the number 2 and was, had been there a couple of years, and I got this charge of a case I had to screen, and it had this person's name on it. I literally went, hey, what's going on? Did you take this charge?
Yeah.
Why did you take this charge? And he's like, oh my God, what happened? I'm like, did you actually ask the officer this, and this, and this? No. I'm like, well, get off solitaire and start asking some questions before you take this. There was that level where you went in there and got in his face or her face and said, really? I got to try this thing. Don't take these.
Yeah, now the ones at what, 1301 Franklin, and was it 500 Jefferson?
Right.
They're not even in the same.
Yeah, I don't know if and maybe they do that, maybe they don't. I haven't heard anything like that, but that was a real. If you took a case like that, you were accountable to it because your name was on it, and you might be in court, or somebody in court might come to you and say, "What are you doing?"
What are you? Yeah.
Can I hijack just a second?
Yeah, hijack.
So because we're under 10 minutes, so I want to use, if I can, your daughter's. And I'm sorry that happened to your daughter and her friends. That was recent, right?
Correct.
But I want to use that as an example. So the person who's accused of the burglaries of the motor vehicles, and those are Class A misdemeanors, has extensive criminal history. You said felony criminal history. Bond was set at 100, maybe you got a PR bond or a general order bond or something. And you sound like you disagree with that.
Absolutely.
Based on the current charge, his history, both?
Well, both. I mean,
so then what should the bond amount have been for the 6 BMVs or the whatever he got charged with?
Yeah, he basically committed, well, there's more of a twist to the story. He committed 3 burglaries of a motor vehicle, but they only took theft charges on him because the prosecutor at intake said, how do we know he's the person who did it?
Can't put him in the car.
He was found in a car with all of the stuff in his car with him and the instrumentalities of what he used to break into the car with him, but they wouldn't take BMV. That's a whole nother issue. But
sure.
It seemed to me that what he had been into in the past, what he had done in terms of the property damage, was more than $100 bond. In fact, he mocked it. So it has to be. It has to be something.
But what's the number? What number do you put on that?
Something that again, bonds were created to, or bail was created to, ensure the safety of the community and that the person would show up in court.
And in the opposite order.
Exactly.
Right. So secure their presence in court, and then also secure the safety.
Exactly.
Of the community.
And I'm not in favor of a bond schematic that only takes one in consideration and not the other.
I agree with that. So here's my sort of feelings. And the show's not about me. The show's about you. But I feel like this country was founded on the default for humans being freedom. And if you want to overcome that default, you have to go through a process that we call due process. Right? And I would not be a good person to judge a situation where me or especially a loved one was a victim. And I know you're not necessarily proposing that, but I don't know a monetary amount. Until that guy's proven guilty, till the evidence is brought into court, deemed admissible and entered against him, and then a fact finder decides, yeah, that's enough evidence to prove your guilt. I don't know what we're supposed to do, because if you raise that bond up to an amount that makes it harder for him to post it, or makes it impossible for him to post it, then I think we're violating our foundation of our country, which is
and I agree with that.
He should be out free.
Right.
And so I don't know the balance. I don't know what to do, and I feel like.
Did you see that argument between Joanne Music and Judge Jordan on Facebook?
No.
They were going at it. So Jordan was saying, District Attorney's Office, you are backlogging our courts. None of your prosecutors are ever ready. I'm paraphrasing, Judge. It's on Facebook, so everybody can watch it. And Joanne Music was responding, saying her counter arguments regarding bail and Constitution. Judge Jordan said, fine, how about we just set every misdemeanor case, you got 10 days to prepare for a trial and you're up. Okay, and so how do you plan to, with the limited resources that the district attorneys have, and the massive amounts of cases that are being filed, to balance that and still dispense proper justice?
He hijacked my hijacking, just so we can all see that.
In terms of the bond issue,
Sure, yeah.
well, he's right. Look, all these numbers are arbitrary. I mean, I pulled the current, I guess, 2017 bail bond schedule, and you wonder, where do they come up with that number, and why is that this number, and what difference does it make? I mean, if it's, there's such a fine line in certain instances between something that's a state jail and a third. It could be the amount of a drug or narcotic or some little factor that somebody, threw in there at the last minute.
Thousandth of a gram.
Exactly. It can make a difference, and all of a sudden it's a $10,000 or $5,000 variance. I don't know the answer to that, but there has to be some middle ground approach where people in our community don't hear that story about my daughter and roll their eyes and vomit in their mouth, and then at the same time understand that the story where a person is being unconstitutionally held without bail and should be out and defending themselves. Because I agree, the default should be release. I mean, if it's between one or the other, I would much rather have people being released and you're struggling with it than people that are being incarcerated wrongfully. It's kind of like the question you ask when you're doing jury selection. What makes you more sick to your stomach? Somebody that got away with a crime they committed, or somebody that was convicted of a crime that they didn't do?
Right.
If you don't say the last one, something's wrong with you, in my opinion. As a human being.
Right.
I saw a bumper sticker, and it was the driver actually had it on his driver's window. It wasn't even on the bumper, and it stuck with me. It had a picture of like an M4 assault rifle above the phrase, but the phrase was something like, "Give me, I'll take
I've seen it.
dangerous freedom over safe dictatorship any day."
Right.
And I agree with that, and it makes me think of Mark Bennett every time I think of that. Like freedom and democracy is ugly, it's dirty, it's dangerous at times. I don't like the gun imagery with it. I think that, but we can talk about the guns. We like to do a lot another time. But that's kind of what freedom and democracy means, is that, it's going to kind of be messy and dirty and uncomfortable. Like freedom of speech means you don't have a right to not be offended, right?
Right.
And I don't know the answer. I'm not running for office, so I get to sit here and ask the questions.
Well, and then like in misdemeanor docket, when they call the doc, and we've seen it, and maybe only half of the people that were supposed to show up showed up. I mean, and then all of a sudden they get FTA warrants, and then is that the but again, I think people that sit in the same room and talk about these things, understanding their level of importance in our community of working together, can solve these things.
This is why one of the reasons why we really feel strongly about this show is that
Well,
we need to talk about stuff.
You got 3 minutes, Todd. What are you telling the people? You got 3 minutes, man.
I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I think I'm the best person for the job. I have the best temperament. I think I know I have the best leadership skills, and I'm not afraid to get it wrong and to listen to other people. Part of my leadership skill will be, you need to learn sometimes by your mistakes, but we all have a vested interest in this community, and if we all work together, everybody's better for it. The defense bar is better for it. Law enforcement is better for it. I know a lot of people ask me, well, you seem like you're going back into the old days of certain... No, there is some nostalgia attached to what we talked about earlier, but there were things that were going on there that were just totally wrong. And even as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, I watched judge after judge after judge and prosecutor do things that by my silence I was complicit in it, and I haven't forgotten that. And I haven't forgotten the role of the changes that needed to be made. But we can fix what's happening now with some common sense approaches to this. And it needs to be done now. It's only getting worse, and some of the ideas that I'm hearing about trying to change it aren't really changed. They're just trying to make it more complicated.
What do you think's the biggest task that's in front of the next elected Harris County District Attorney's
Well,
officer?
whoever takes this job, it's going to be like inheriting the current day Miami Dolphins. It's going to be really difficult to fix.
I forgot about those guys.
Yeah, so this isn't going to be a year deal. I mean, there's some things, I mean, hell, there may not be anybody left to fire by the time I get there. There's so many people leaving.
Because they're leaving?
I was going to
Yeah,
ask
that's
that.
funny.
Do you shake things up?
No. I
Or-
think, and I don't know, I know we have hardly any time, but I think one of the biggest mistake she made right off the drop was the Friday purging. Massacre, the December 16th massacre or whatever. Some of those people probably would have quit anyway, but you cut 10% of your office staff, and some of those people were the only people that really knew what to do, and you didn't at least talk to them and learn from them and try to see if they could work within your model, and you just did it for political expediency. It was just foolhardy, and that ain't going to happen with me. Whoever's working there now will be working there January 1 until I sit down there and talk to them and figure out where do you fit in here, and maybe you don't. But I'm going to give you a chance to tell me why you need to stay, and maybe you're right.
Right.
Do you have any, what's the legacy of Todd Overstreet? Of leaving, when you're elected and you retire or whatever, what's the legacy?
Well, I hope it's a one-off. I hope I come in there and fix it, and everything is perfect, and somebody smarter than me takes it over, and I get back to being a weirdo cowboy and roping and practicing law.
With some fly fishing in there, right?
And mixing in some fly fishing.
All right, good.
The man was walking up to the courthouse like he was about to just clean it up.
Yeah, somebody said to me,
serious.
"You look like you're here to fix something."
He looked
I'm
like you're here to fix something.
Yeah.
I think I was with
Just so happens I am.
you. Just so happens I
Well, thank
am.
y'all for letting me come out here. This is pretty cool.
Yeah. Will you come back again? as things
Absolutely.
Get heated up a little
yeah,
more?
absolutely.
Okay.
It's wonderful. How many? So just as we finish up, when do we vote?
Well, in March is the primary. We don't officially get on the ballot until November the 9th, I think until December the 10th or 9th, like a month, where you get to finally be on the ballot and declare, which I'm looking forward to. I was kind of waiting until the mayoral race was over because it's hard to fish in the same pond.
Sure.
But that seems
You
like
got
it's going
another
to
month
drag
of
out
that.
a little bit longer
Yeah.
than I thought. That seemed like a good
That
idea
was-
until Tuesday.
That was the last time I saw Devin Anderson in a courtroom was when she came down to terminate Tony Busby's
I saw.
PTI like a day after she signed
We
it.
all want to know what happened in 1980, Tony. We all want to know.
No,
You and me.
I was curious about the camouflage fatigues for the
Yes.
Yeah.
election party. That was different.
Yeah.
For potentially
Yeah.
the newest Harris County District Attorney, Todd Overstreet. Thank you so very
Hey,
much
thank
for
y'all.
being
Appreciate it.
here. And we hope to have you back.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Justin Harris,
JV Vela.
Tony, Busby, call me. Let's get on the show.
Or Sly. Come
Or
on
Sly, where you
Yeah.
at? Or the other guy, what's his name?
in. They're out now.
Oh,
Joe
there.
King,
Yeah.
Dwight Boykins.
Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. Thanks everybody for being here.